Okay, so I have 3 o'clock over here, so we are going to go ahead and get started. So wanted to welcome all of you to this session for raising the standard for outside competitive experience to go through the bylaw proposal that the Competitive Experience Committee has put forth. My name is Josh Bohr. I'm the Competitive Experience Committee liaison. So I will kind of introduce this here, and then I'm going to pass it over to Marcia Lashley, who is the committee chair, to start the presentation. So with that, Marcia, you're up.
All right, thanks, Josh. Let's go to the next slide. I am Marcia Lashley. I'm the FAR at Missouri Valley College. And I'd like to also introduce some of our other committee members that are on the call today, or they should be by now. Jose Larios from Montreat College, Lucas Morgan from LSU Shreveport, Kevin Sweeney from Wayland Baptist, Kurt Long from Clark University, Richard Teeter from Friends University, and Larry DeSimplier from the Crossroads League. I did hear that Richard Teeter will be stepping down his role as FAR at Friends University, so I want to thank him for his service to this committee and his input. And I'd also like to kind of give a shout out to 2 previous members who had key input in our proposal, and that is Clay Robinson from Lewis and Clark State College and Drew Watson from Southwestern University. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Josh and Ellen from the national office, Josh Bohr and Ellen Ramsey, for leading and guiding us through this process. So if you'd like to participate today, you can do so in the chat at the bottom of the screen. If you just direct your chat to NAIA host, and they will voice your question. That being said, we would like to keep questions at kind of a higher level and not really drill down into very specific leagues, if at all possible. So really, what is competitive experience? The eligibility in the NAIA consists of applying academic standards, including terms of attendance and other regulations, as well as athletic standards and amateurism. We're going to be talking about athletic standards today, and athletic standards are currently made up of 2 components. That's intercollegiate seasons of competition, which are usually easy to apply. And then there is non-intercollegiate competition, often we refer to that as outside competition, and that's not as quite as easy to apply. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So as I mentioned, the competitive experience rules and application, they're not easy to apply, and they are ever evolving. And this slide shows some of our latest changes throughout history. In 2009, the NAIA membership moved from charging seasons of competition based on remuneration to elite level of competition. In 2010, the committee created the evaluative criteria to define elite level of competition. In 2011, the committee began a multi-year study on how the criteria were being used. In 2012, membership approved changes to the competitive experience rule to expand the military exception for all nations, not just the US. In 2013, membership approved the addition of the post-secondary amateur year to the competitive experience rule. In 2014, the CEC updated the evaluative criteria to more accurately assess non-collegiate participation, and definitions for each criteria were added to provide clarity and consistency. In 2015, the updated evaluative criteria started being used in eligibility decisions for 2015 and beyond. In 2016, the membership approved the postgraduate exception. In 2017 and 2018, there were several changes to the unattached exception. And that brings us to 2020 last year, when we proposed and membership approved the minimum competition threshold, in other words, the 20% rule. So that brings us to our current state, elite level of competition. Now, just a reminder about elite level competition. When I referred to the criteria before, there are 7 components of the elite level competition. If a student competes in a league or competition that meets a minimum of 2 out of those 7 criteria, they are charged a season of competition. And while the committee at the time and the committee before the committee that's serving now, they did their due diligence and tried to do everything to create this level playing field, it's not working out. and it's been problematic. The criteria can result in students being charged for experience that are not considered high level by sport experts, but technically they do meet the criteria. Evaluation of leagues often relies on information provided by sources that may change once a decision is rendered, including officials who may have a conflict of interest. League representatives sometimes misunderstand the criteria and therefore inflate the status of their league, thinking it will help their athletes get recruited. Sometimes the language barrier contributes to the confusion as well. Original sources will change their answers once they see how it affected their athletes. Our new sources are found, the sources change, making it difficult to know who the true authority is on any given experience. The criteria differ based on team versus individual sports, leading to inequities and competitive opportunities for different student athletes. Reviews and appeals, and there are a lot of them, require a lot of time by the Eligibility Center staff, the Competitive Experience Committee, and campus personnel, and many times resulted in a decision that we just didn't feel good about. The student met the elite level competition criteria, but we just didn't feel good about it. We didn't think it was truly an elite level, but it did meet the criteria. So while we followed our rules and policies, it just didn't have a good feel about it. So we would like to modify that rule. We propose that we discontinue the use of the evaluative criteria to determine if any given league or event is chargeable. Instead, we would like to raise the standard to a student will be charged a season of competition for participating in at least one professional level event within a 12-month period. A team, league, or event will be defined as professional competition and result in charging a season competition if any one of the following is met. Number one, the competition or team or league where the team or league self-declares or markets themselves as professional. If they market themselves as professional, their website says they're professional, we will consider them professional. Or if competition or on a team or league that self-declares as semi-professional, and the second part has an and, if they declare themselves as semi-professional and said league reimburses the participants beyond actual expenses of travel, meals, and lodging, then those students will be charged a season of competition. The committee believes this will move us in a direction that will allow for more participation to benefit recruitment, retention, and the student experience. Now, again, we're not trying to undo anything that was done before. We believe that the best intentions were made. It's just been problematic enforcing that criteria moving forward, and there have been a lot of appeals. So when the CEC discussed this, we discussed this over several meetings over the last couple of years, and we even presented at the 2019 convention seeking input. When we came up with this criteria this year, we needed more information. So the national office conducted an impact analysis, and I think you'll find it astonishing. And I believe the information that Josh Bohr is going to share with you shortly supports our proposal. So again, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Josh and let him go over the impact analysis.
All right, thank you, Marcia. So as Marcia mentioned, as part of this, knowing that raising the bar was going to have a large, the committee thought, a large impact on potential eligibility questions for season of competition, the Eligibility Center was tasked with doing an impact analysis on our directory of competition. So for those of you that might not know, the directory of competition is where we store the events online that we have researched and either deemed chargeable or not chargeable. And that is what we analyzed here. So getting into the data, just a really quick point, these are labeled as DOC or Directory of Competition entries. So an entry can either refer to a league, an event, so for track and field or tennis, or a tournament. It can refer to any of those three. So what you can see here is two pie charts. The first is the Directory of Competition under the current competitive experience rules. And as you can see, the breakdown is 64.15% chargeable and 35.85% not chargeable. To give context for that number, there's currently 4,466 entries in the directory of competition. So if you'd like to do that math and figure out what those numbers lead to, feel free. And over here on the right, we have what we expect the impact of this bylaw proposal to be on those directory of competition entries. So the not chargeable events would go from 35.85% to 82.02%, which is an increase of 46.17%. And the chargeable events would decrease from 64.15 down to 10.68, which is a reduction of 53.47%. And you will notice there is 7.39% indicated here of unknown. And there's a few reasons for that. As Marcia just outlined when she was reading the bylaw a little bit ago, there's a semi-pro designation, which has a second layer to it. So in the directory of competition as it currently exists, we had leagues flagged as semi-pro, but we did not have that secondary question answered of, is there reimbursement beyond expense for travel, meals, and lodging? So there will be some additional research that needs to be done from the Eligibility Center side to determine if these leagues do end up chargeable. And then the secondary reason for that is prize money. So there were a lot of entries in here that had designated as prize money, but not professional. So that would just require further evaluation by the Eligibility Center before it's deemed whether they will be chargeable or not. And currently that number, just to give you a solid number rather than a percentage, that is 330 entries as it currently stands. So here you see a breakdown in sports under the current eligibility rules. So you can look through all of these. There's not exact numbers on here, but you can get a general idea of where these different sports stand on this. So what I want you all to do is, if you have a particular sport that you have questions about or have any, leaning towards, if you're a coach, what have you, keep an eye on where that bar is. And this is what that breakdown will look like under the new competitive experience rule. You see, again, the green is the not chargeable. So matching what the pie charts earlier showed of a large movement towards the not chargeable side of things, and a decrease in the orange, which is leagues or entries rather that are chargeable. Once again, here you see the gray, and those are the unknowns that I mentioned earlier. And specifically men's and women's tennis is very impacted by this. So again, more research from the Eligibility Center staff will be needed to hash out if those entries, tournaments, what have you, are going to end up being chargeable. All right, back to you, Marcia.
So in summary, we think moving to this in this new direction will be more of a straightforward approach. It's easier to understand. There's less unknown. Transparency, coaches will know ahead of time when recruiting. If it's not listed in the directory of competition, they can at least go on that league's website and say, okay, they're listed as professional, so I know this student athlete will be charged a season competition. I think it'll lead toward a more consistent application, and it just raises the bar. And I think it'll just allow for better recruitment moving forward. So we'll open it now for questions. And again, I'll ask again that you keep your questions at a higher level and not get into individual leagues.
All right, so I did receive a question and it just scrolled past it. So give me a second here, Marcia. So this is from Julie Allen. So remember, please do send those questions to NAIA host. But if a current student athlete has been charged a year and the modifications change to discontinue the use of evaluative criteria, can the student appeal that status? Marcia?
Yes, they can appeal and write, and just like they do now for current any kind of legislation, you can request an exception to the rule or appeal and provide documentation and evidence.
Okay. I have another question. What dates of competition will be affected? So this bylaw will be effective as of May 1st, 2022. So that will be if a student competes in the event after May 1st of 2022, they will be subject to these new rules rather than the prior rules. Okay, questions still coming in. So Marcia, I'll direct this one over to you. Will student athletes get penalized for performing with national teams?
Nationals, I need in, for example.
So the question didn't specify a sport. So whoever sent that in, I guess, Ellen Ramsey, if you want to hop in over here.
Hello. This question might be about students who represent their country in international play. So currently under the old competitive experience rule, those international contests and representing one's nation in international play tended to meet at least one other of those 7 criteria that Marcia went over earlier in the presentation. And so largely those were considered chargeable. Under this new proposal, assuming it passes, that would again be determined if the national play was considered professional and self-declared itself as that. I'll also note that the committee proposed last year in 2020 an Olympics exception, which was passed by the membership. So that is also newly in effect. And of course, we didn't get a chance to kind of implement that rule over the course of the past year, given the exceptions due to COVID. But that is already an exception in place, that Olympic representation is exempt from seasons of competition.
Thank you, Ellen. For those of you who don't know, Ellen is the outgoing competitive experience committee liaison, so able to provide some historical context there for you all. I'll throw this one back over to Marcia as well. Marcia, are there any concerns that changes are being made too drastic too quickly?
Not really. I mean, not as far as the committee is concerned, because we have spent a lot of time, and we did take it to membership in 2019. We reached out to individual coaches to provide us input, and we really think this is the way to go moving forward. It was an arduous task going through those appeals one by one and researching, and in the national office having to researching. Some of us did our own researching, the language barrier, and it was just too muddy, and the answers would change from year to year. They'd get a new director of the league and the answers would change. We found out some recruiters use agents. Those agents were coaching students not to provide information. It was just too muddy and too messy, and it just wasn't working for us.
Okay, another question here saying, will FARs still be encouraged to make their own decisions, or will they need to contact the Eligibility Center to get an official ruling? So 2 parts to this question. The Directory of Competition is available publicly to those who have Play NAIA access. So you are able to go in, look up a league, and see the status of chargeable or not chargeable. And then to answer the question of will FARs be encouraged to make their own decisions, nothing will change in that regard. If you have a student coming in for a league that doesn't happen to be in the directory, you can still do research on your own. I know myself, other staff here, depending on the time of year, would be more than willing to look into a league potentially if there's a very specific question on a specific league that for a student athlete who happens to be coming in. Okay, another question. Would this impact a student's amateur status if they are charged with a season for being part of a professional level league or team? Marcia, do you want to take that one?
I would like to defer to Ellen to answer that one.
Defer to that. Okay, well, I'll take that question then.
Okay.
To start off with, these bylaws are separate from the amateur bylaws. Just to start off with that. So season competition and amateur status are 2 separate things. So there is a chance that a student could be charged in a professional level league, but that does not impact the amateur status process from the school side of things. So a student could compete in a professional level league and be charged that season, and they might not be considered a professional. That's a distinct possibility. And
somebody asked on our site on this that didn't go to NAIA House if it would be retroactive, and it is not retroactive. If they've already been charged, they're participating now, it will not be retroactive.
Okay, so circling back to a question from earlier, asking about students who have been impacted but still enrolled, would it be applied retroactively? And I think actually, Marcia, that may be what you just touched on.
Mhm. Yeah, it will not be retroactive. Just like the 20% rule is not retroactive. And other rules that have changed throughout the years.
And something else that I wanted to sort of touch base on here while we're still having questions rolling in is that, this is a fundamental change and shift in the way, or the proposal is a change and shift in the way that the NAIA will evaluate outside competition, and it is a much higher bar. So it is up to you all as membership to decide if this is the right direction. I think I speak for Marcia, and Marcia, correct me if I'm wrong, but Marcia and the committee definitely feel like this is the direction that this all should go, and that this is the correct way to move going forward. But again, it is all up to you when we vote later this week, or when you all vote later this week, rather, to decide if this is the correct direction.
Or if you believe there are unintended consequences that we have not thought about, feel free to email any of us and we will certainly look into that.
Yep, for sure. If you want to shoot myself, Marcia, an email with those concerns. I know Lucas Morgan, another member of the committee, just put this in the general chat that everyone can see, but I wanted to touch on it. In the process of coming to this proposal, the committee, we did reach out to various interested parties, so coaches groups. We got feedback from the coaches associations. We also got feedback from recruiting companies in a couple of countries, specifically the UK and Brazil, to get a better idea of how these changes might impact students coming from the countries that they work in. So there was outreach done and feedback garnered prior to this proposal being put together. And we still do have plenty of time here. So if anybody does have questions, feel free to send that over to NAIA host. But don't see anything coming in. So if that is all the questions we have, we'll go ahead and wrap this up early. Thank you to Marcia for hosting. Thank you to the rest of the Competitive Experience Committee for helping put this proposal together. And we look forward to the ability for you all to vote on this later this week. And we will be having the caucus to vote on that, as I mentioned. One last thing I want to mention, just encourage you all to go into the exhibit hall and check out our sponsors. Make sure you pop over there, give them some love because they have made all of this possible. So short and sweet today. Thank you all for coming in. And again, if you have any questions, please direct those or concerns, direct those to myself or Marcia. Thank you all.